Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on. My camera's all blurry and the OBS wouldn't recognize my server, so it took me a second to get it fixed. I don't even know what was changed that made it stop glitching. But anyways, how do you differentiate between the entheogenic insight and ego-driven hallucination? Are political shifts and societal upheaval signs of the old power structures crumbling? Yes, of course. Um, all right, so I'll get to those in a second. Let me settle in a little bit here. It's been a crazy couple of days. We went. My son and I walked up the road the other day, and there was this like stone entryway. Just a I'm sure there was a structure around it in the past, and it had a San Pedro cactus growing on top of it. And I thought, well, that's interesting. We should come back tomorrow. So the next day I drank some San Pedro and we went up there and I was expecting maybe, there was a sign that said archaeological site or whatever. So I was expecting maybe like a couple of cuculas or something that the like grain storage things or, like nothing crazy. And it was crazy. It was really crazy. It was this huge sprawling complex of Incan ruins. There was not a soul up there. It was way high up, probably about 14,000, 15,000 feet. And so I have a video incoming about that. And there's not a lot of information about it. Apparently nobody really knows what it was for. But the locals say something really interesting about it that I have decided I'm not going to share for reasons I can't get into. Which is kind of sad, but anyways, that video's on its way. It was pretty awesome though to just find this huge fortress of ancient buildings, and there was a lot of buildings. The Incan Highway really just goes forever, and there is just a tremendous amount of weirdness everywhere. Vitrified stone, miles underground, gold storage facilities, I guess, have been found still recently. Like there was an earthquake in '86, I think, and it exposed a room full of like gold effigies. And you see these, they're sort of like in your house where you would put a vase in a recess in the wall, they're kind of like that. And they say that every single one of them had a gold effigy of some kind in them at one point. And when you realize how many of them there were, like the amount of gold that was looted from this place is completely insane. Anyways, more on that soon. And San Pedro has really, really helped me a lot to get some momentum going and enthusiasm and just feel energized and rejuvenated. So I'm stoked about that. And before we get into the rest of this, there's something I want to address, a comment on a short that I posted the other day. And I was basically saying that US presidents, like the way that they're selected, or the primary qualification is that they're completely amoral and they're completely under control, like absolute puppets. And someone commented actually twice. The first thing was like, this takes away from your channel so much. And I was like, what the fuck, And then, can you imagine drinking all this beautiful plant medicine and still thinking this stuff matters? Yeah, it matters, bro. I'm going to have to disagree with you pretty wholeheartedly there that it doesn't matter. Because there are a few like primary devices that are used to keep people divided. One of them is race, right? Even when we have these movements that the media and the government even gets involved sometimes, that appear to be anti-racism, trying to fix it, they're actually deliberately stoking it and stoking the fires of it. And I'm going to do a stream in a few days where we're going to get into that in more depth because, the primary thing is dividing the lower classes. So if you can keep poor white folks and poor black folks divided, that is a huge, huge victory for the overlords, right? So that's one thing. And then the politics is the other one. And the reality is that no matter which side you're on the same side. If you're supporting any political party or president in the United States, you are supporting the overlords. There's no difference. There's no difference. And when people wake up, when people snap out of the culture-induced coma, but more specifically, when they achieve a higher level of consciousness and awareness and self-awareness, start developing some metacognition, the first thing that generally happens is that they escape the political traps, the political programming. If that doesn't happen and the person still manages to elevate above that, that's actually extremely problematic. If they reach the higher mind, but they haven't taken care of the lower strata first, and there are different ways that you can fail to do that. I failed to take care of my self-sabotaging tendencies before I achieved higher consciousness. That was not good. And this is kind of a different version of that. And so what happens is you have not learned to distinguish truth from falsehood. And so when the parameters of your perception are expanded and you still don't know how to do that, you're just going to have more bullshit flooding in from the cosmic level. You know what I mean? You're still predisposed to receiving falsehood. And this is why in like the ancient mystery traditions, there was a graded system, to make sure that before you move on from a certain level, all of your indoctrination, all of your programming, all of your falsehoods, all of your lies and distortions and delusions and shadows had been removed, because it just gets more difficult. It's like when you raise up a level in a video game, it gets harder and harder until you get to the final boss, right? Same thing with the life and consciousness. The more you expand what is available to you to perceive, the more difficult it is to navigate. So yeah, that whole thing about how the political stuff doesn't matter is absolute bullshit, because you're not going anywhere and you're actually going to become more of a problem. It's going to hurt more than it's going to help if you do manage to even elevate yourself without fully eradicating all of those like lower influences. Like if you haven't believe in an institutionalized religion, nope. And if you believe in any kind of political figure in the United States, or probably pretty much anywhere in the world, you know what I mean? You're not ready to progress. Is smoking weed bad for your pain? He spelled it weird. Pineal gland. Sorry, I'm not making fun of you. I just read it the way it was spelled and I didn't understand for a second. The pineal gland, yes and no. It depends on the amount, everything is fine in my opinion. Everything. If you have the willpower and discipline and the wisdom to walk with it wisely, to use it correctly. So marijuana is a mixed bag, and it's different for different people as well. And it's different for different people at different times. Like right now that I needed San Pedro, the way I respond to it is infinitely different than the way I did before, and including after the fact, like the next day. And so, some people are going to smoke weed and they're going to become absolutely worthless, brain dead idiots, and there's something about marijuana that facilitates delusion, right? Like a lot of chronic pot smokers that I've known are the most delusional people that I've ever met in my life. They're able to believe things about themselves and their marijuana habit that are completely the opposite of reality, So marijuana can be an excellent tool. It can enhance your third eye and your intuition. That's one of the powers that it has. But if you overuse it, or you're the wrong type of person with the wrong chemistry, it's going to be a problem for you. So there's no cut and dry answer. And there's no, I knew a guy that made $115 million a year that smoked weed all day, and he was a cop. He was a volunteer sheriff. It was fine for him to just smoke weed all the time, but for a lot of other people, it's not going to work out for you. What's the name of the guy from your community post? Oh, that was Albert Pike. By the way, I will say something about that. I'm not going to talk about it yet because I want to wait and see if I actually get any takers on this. And for those of you guys that don't know what we're talking about, when I went up on the mountain, one of the things that I thought about was this sort of conflict that I came into, because I I had the information, but I didn't take it seriously because people say a lot of stuff about this person and his organization, and it's usually not true. So I didn't really look that hard into it. Plus, I didn't have AI back then to data scrape like I can now, and I was able to confirm, and it was kind of problematic. It put me in a weird spot. So I thought, well, let's just talk to the people concerned, who happen to be black people in this case. So I posted, "Attention, black people," or something like, "We need to talk," you know. So before I really get into the details of it, I want to wait and see if I can have those conversations. Not because I'm worried I'm going to offend anyone or I haven't done anything weird. It's nothing like that. It's just that I would rather them not know what we're going to talk about until we do. So yeah, but there's a second part to it because it kind of led to something else. There is sort of like a social mission here, you know, like I have an idea, and it might be a bad idea, but it might be a really, really good idea. So that's all I'm going to say about it. Just keep your eyes peeled, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss this, because it's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how people respond to this. And if I test the water a little bit and it seems like it's a sound idea, then we're going to go for it. Because like I was saying at the beginning of the stream, the whole unity thing, you know, that's really what I'm about here. I hate the idea of wasted human potential. That's really what gets me. And that's because I have a personal vendetta against wasted personal potential, you know? So it's like we have to figure out what no one's saying and say it. And it really helps if things are controversial because the algorithm feeds on dissonance and people arguing and stuff. And I'm pretty sure it's true and that it'll work. And it could bring down one of the biggest and most important walls in our society if it really caught fire. So seems worthy. I don't think I'm putting my ass on the line too much with it. What substances do you know to enhance remote viewing, especially the most? That would be ayahuasca. Probably. Hold on, I'm trying to look back. Okay, I don't want to miss any of the earlier questions. So, yeah, the reason I say ayahuasca is not necessarily because I've had remote viewing experiences with ayahuasca, because the dose that you need to take, I think, is like ridiculously insane. Now I've taken some pretty high doses of ayahuasca. I've even smoked DMT after drinking a large dose of ayahuasca, which I wouldn't recommend doing that. I didn't get hurt or freak out or anything, but it was really uncomfortable. I just wanted to see how much I could get that portal open, you know, without having to drink a liter. But anyways, if you look at the old anthropological records and whatnot, you'll see that a lot of explorers and anthropologists from back in the day, when none of these indigenous people had seen a TV, you know, there weren't even TVs yet in a lot of these cases. They definitely had not left the jungle. They definitely had not been to Egypt. They had definitely not been to China, you know. And the reports are that the shaman could drink ayahuasca and he could remote view the pyramids. He could describe them. You know, there's these three big triangles and, you know, they're in the desert and there's camels around or whatever. I mean, you know, obviously we can call them camels. I'm sure you just described like there's this ridiculous looking fucking animal with a big breast on its back or something. And another one was that the guy described a street corner in China, like a specific street corner in China that the anthropologist had been to himself. Now, there is one little thing that needs to be noted here that is important to consider, and that's that it's definitely true that ayahuasca induces telepathy in people. It's like, it's not like, you know, you're reading their mind exactly, but I've done it to people. People have done it to me to a degree that is undeniable, like absolutely specifically exactly what I was thinking about. Particularly this teacher that I had for a number of years used to do it all the time, you know, and after a certain amount of time drinking ayahuasca, the filters kind of stay down and you're more receptive to that kind of thing. It's like a feedback loop. And so it's absolutely possible that these shamans were not remote viewing and that they had just plucked these things out of the brain of the person they're talking to, you know? So it's kind of, I do think that it could happen though, because I think that with ketamine, for example, sometimes people have out of body experiences, and there have been occasions I've personally witnessed where the person that had done the ketamine claimed to have come out of their body with 360 vision and floated down to the end of the driveway at this place. It was kind of like a ranch, so the end of the driveway is far. And he knew who was out there talking and what they were saying. So I think that our consciousness has a sort of trap. It's like the filter can be deactivated to the extent that the consciousness is actually sort of dislodged from the body. So at really, really high doses of ayahuasca, I think you kind of just go out into the field, and it would take a lot of skill because you would have to maintain focus and concentration at really high doses, But the reality is that after even the amount of practice that I've had, it doesn't really matter how much I drink. It's not more confusing or anything, It's not more overwhelming. It's just more clear and vivid. That's really all that happens. So, all right. So back to Miss Athena's questions. How do you differentiate between entheogenic insight and ego-driven hallucination? Years and years of hard work, And the thing is that any ego-driven hallucination still has meaning and purpose in terms of, potential for self-knowledge, gaining self-knowledge and insight. It's not coming from nowhere, So it really, I guess what I've done over the years is just really developed a habit of mindfulness and analysis. So if I think something, I analyze it. And if there's a potential that it's ego driven, I maintain the objectivity to acknowledge that, particularly during like the Chapel Perilous or Phoenix process period of my life. That was a real issue, and even when I was correct about something, I might suspect it was head cheese, whether it's ego or a wish demon, something you just want to believe that may not be ego driven, but not necessarily true because it's intuitive. It takes a lot of experience and cultivation of a sort of healthy detachment and skill in psychoanalysis, and the ability to be objective with yourself about yourself is one of the hardest things I think for people to do, but that's really the only advice I can give. You have to maintain a presence of mind and an objectivity about things and not fall in love with your own ideas, and that's really all there is to it. This is why meditation on its own is not enough. Psychedelics on their own is not enough. Studying psychology on its own is not enough. If you're really serious about navigating this kind of terrain and developing efficacy in the field, then you have to do all of those things and then some, Otherwise, it's like you have to balance the pentagram. I always tell people, if you tell me that you want to understand the universe better, and that's why you're taking psychedelics, I'll hand you a book on physics and arithmetic and geometry, and you know what I mean? Like you can't just drink ayahuasca to do that. You have to do actual work. You have to leverage academic learning in order to compensate for the pull of esoteric knowledge and experience. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you will find yourself so open-minded that wind is whistling through your ears, and you don't want that. Are political shifts and societal upheaval signs of the odd power structures crumbling? If so, what replaces them? Us, I hope. I mean, how can magical practitioners contribute to collective healing during times of collapse and chaos? Okay, Salman Zafar, you're welcome. All right, so let me answer her second question. By the way, you guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. We are demonetized, so we don't get any support from YouTube, so we appreciate patrons. And we have a website, luminosis.com. We still have a room in August last half of July and August at the Sacred Valley event. And then in Manu in November, still some space as well. So email me if you're interested in that. And so yeah, these are the death throes of the old Aeon. You know, that's what we're experiencing right now. The awareness of a universal mind and the integrated consciousness of the universe and all of the things in the universe is becoming almost impossible to miss. And one of the big themes on this channel forever has always been that the reason for the demonization of the esoteric fraternities and mystery schools, it started all the way back in Egypt. And then when they realized it was a problem, when it made its way to Italy, which was then Greece actually, but you know, it's Italy now. That part anyways, where Pythagoras founded his little school. Anyways, they banned it there as well, you know. And if you guys were listening when I read the Templar's degree of Albert Pike's book on the Masonic degrees, you know, he was saying that even as far back as Egypt and Rome, the suppression of free thought was their primary concern. Number one, all the way back then. And this is why. Because illuminated people are sovereign. They know they're sovereign. They can't be manipulated. They can't be lied to. They can't be fooled. They're not going to worship a god that you tell them to. You know what I mean? Like, they think for themselves, and the whole entire system that we live in is based on manipulation, propaganda, and indoctrination. You know, it's just that simple. And if people come to their senses, it's over for the exploiters. You know, and I do suspect there's something more sophisticated than that going on from the universal point of view. But for all intents and purposes, that's good enough, you know. And the thing is, it's this elevation of consciousness is a thing that actually can't be suppressed. It can be distorted. It can be sort of like, you could even say frozen. You know what I mean? It can be affected. Its trajectory can be affected. Its modality of expression can be convoluted, but it can't be stopped. It's an emergent property of the physical universe. Everything is, or it wouldn't exist. That's the definition of non-existence, right? So it's a force, and it's a force that is generated by the convergence of forces, right? So it's like trying to hold your thumb over a hose. Eventually the pressure is going to overcome your thumb, and they know that. And so right now we're on the verge, you know, it's bleeding out of the sciences, right? The evidence for non-neural cognition, field-based memory and intelligence. You know, plants can count, and they can engineer for not only for other trees based on what's afflicting them, but they can prioritize their relatives. You know, and they have no neurons. There's evidence for quantum consciousness emerging from various fields, even anesthesiology. So they're fucking done for if they don't create some Stargate $500 billion AI smart city running, you know, Elon Musk's billion satellites, chip in your head. If they don't do that in time, they're done for, you know. And what exactly that'll look like in terms of the transition, that's tough to say, you know. And one of the reasons it's tough to say is that the unexpected is expected. Always expect the unexpected. If the thunder don't get you, the lightning will, you know, kind of thing. and on the one hand, I don't really see a way with the level of power, you know, the machinery they have. The technology, the surveillance. I mean, if you look at the AI we have access to and what it can do, try to imagine what the CIA and the, you know, NSA had 30 years ago, probably. You know, I mean, they've even been talking about arresting people before they commit crimes, because the algorithm will be able to tell them that that person is going to commit a crime, where they're going to commit the crime, and what it is. And it's true, because pattern recognition really can tell, you know, a sufficiently powerful processor exactly what a person, if they have enough information about that person. The whole social media thing really is kind of a trap. It allows them to collect all of your thoughts, and I don't care what they say. They're not listening, because I say things around my phone and get ads all the time directly related. And as far as the predicting behavior thing, I've even gone for like a walk and left my phone at home, and thought about something that's not part of my normal world, like abstract, kind of weird, not typical of me. And I come home and there's a recommendation for that very thing on my phone. It's happened like 3 times. So, we are confronted with a tremendous impediment. But I also have seen LA cops refuse to assist the feds because what they're doing is immoral. And there are other countries where the police and soldiers have laid down their guns and shields on the side of the people on much larger scales. There's also the possibility of a solar flare. We haven't yet hit the solar maximum, and that could really fuck them up. There's no way to protect against the loss of data and really extreme technological problems potentially. We could all be destroyed too. The sun could just lap us up into another dimension like it's nothing. It's kind of looking like it might. So, there's the possibility of alien intervention. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So for me, I think that just staying the course and knowing that our minds are entrained, for one thing, it's a scientifically proven fact that whoever has the highest oscillations, the other people around them, it's a just natural law that they're going to raise up, chase that higher cycle. It's how all things that oscillate, be doing it, So we have a lot of hidden cards in our sleeve. And I think we also have the general trajectory of life and the positive charge of the universe. I've always thought that evil isn't really an active force. It's more of a byproduct of the positive one, and it is facilitated and sort of the abortive birth of chaos. So, and if that wasn't true, I don't think we would be going anywhere. And the general trajectory of creation and evolution is improvement. Things aren't just changing in organisms, they get better. And I think that this isn't just random, meaningless accident, and it is all purposeful. So what it would look like on the other side of this, there's 2 possibilities. One of those possibilities is it'll go my way, and people will override the trillions of dollars of programming. Leaders will emerge. I'll do it if I have to. You know what I mean? If that's my destiny, I'm not scared. If they're going to shoot me or whatever, it's fine. I'll just incarnate somewhere else, no big deal. You know what I mean? Like, if our revolution succeeds, then it's going to look like people as sovereign beings. It's going to look like fairness. It's going to look like equity. It's going to look like no bigotry. It's going to look like no despotism. You know what I mean? It's going to look like using technology for the right things and land for the right things, and a moral and ethical code that's based on the algorithms of nature that is like really actually obvious once you get your head out of your boomer parents' asses, you know what it would look like. Completely re-engineering our modus operandi, that we would live to experience, to create, to innovate, to create art and music on the highest possible level, to experience things from every possible vantage point. We could be doing so much better. And right now we're doing everything in service to people that are just completely hollow, empty, vapid, fucking wastes of space. And it's It's so bad, you know. It's not. I almost wouldn't even mind if they were like pharaohs or something, and they were like floating around, and you know, they were spiritual, and it made sense that we were supporting them because they're going to do way cooler shit than we are. And if the universe is a mind experiencing through us, then that kind of makes sense. But in this case, they're just fucking douchebags. You know what I mean? And worse, they're just evil pieces of shit. So it just doesn't make any sense that they have this position relative to the rest of us, and we have to fix it, or our life is going to suck. Because if we don't, within probably a matter of just a few short years, we are all going to be like gone, most of us, and enslaved the rest of us, basically. You know, it'll be a miserable, like, automaton, fucking totalitarian technocracy hell. And if we don't act, now, that's going to happen. It's happening right now. It's true. Deep down, everyone knows what's right. Um, uh, this is why I was talking about that the other day in the Templar stream, right? Like, how Friday the 13th is still considered bad luck 700 years later. What? Because the Templars almost did what I'm talking about, and the Illuminati as well. All the way back, well, not the Illuminati then. The Illuminati got close again later, you know, but then they were subverted and, of course, demonized because the overlords don't want people to know that. But the Templars almost did. They almost overthrew the papacy, the tiara of Rome, and the crowns of Europe and everything. And then the day they were all arrested, deep down inside, people were like, oh, fuck. That's not good. Okay, so let me see. How can magical practitioners contribute to collective healing during times of war collapse? Well, that's the thing. You know, at this point, the indoctrination is so incredibly deep in people that it's really difficult to just talk to them, you know, to just say like, hey, have you noticed that Trump is in the Epstein papers 67 times and that he's been recorded saying all these horrible things about like his own daughter and like, you know, bragging about going into underage girls' dressing rooms and, you know what I mean? Like, haven't you noticed that kind of, you know, you can't do that because people are just so completely invested and indoctrinated and sucked up into this bullshit that's going to work. So what we have to do is live by example. You know, why is it saying I'm not receiving enough data? Now it says no data. Just want to make sure I'm actually streaming and not just sitting here talking to myself because that's weird. Are we glitching or anything? I mean, you guys could let me know that, and then I can look. There's no way I can fix it if we are. So, anyways, you know, living by example for one thing. Make your life as enviable as possible, so that people look at you and are like, "What the hell are they doing? That you know, why are they so happy? Why is it so interesting?" And you know what I mean? Like that's one thing. And then also, I talk a lot about entrainment, and entanglement could play a role too. But I'm trying to stick to the science here, and entrainment definitely allows us to elevate the minds of our brothers and sisters by lifting up our own, you know? So magical practitioners can contribute because really all the magic is just mastering your mind, you know, and interfacing with the larger mind and being aware that it's there. That's really all it is. So you have to do the best job you can at elevating yourself and being very mindful about how you interface with the universe. And then you will have an effect, whether it's direct or not. You know, you don't have to meet anyone. You don't have to talk to anyone. All you have to do is make a ripple in still water when there is no pebble toss nor wind to blow. Opinion on afterlife. Those who speak do not know, and those who know do not speak. That's it. That's the end of that story. That's the end of it. There's no discussion beyond that. There can't be. Are you dead? Am I dead? Why are you asking me? Do I look dead? That's the truth. And that's the truth that so many people just can't live with because it's one of the greatest fears of humanity. You know, we don't know. But what I can say is that we can have sort of informed opinions, and we know that energy cannot be destroyed; it can only be transformed. I heard someone in a YouTube video say that means that we're eternal. It doesn't, because energy could be on or off. It does. It means the energy that makes us will never leave, but it doesn't mean that it's going to maintain the same state. It doesn't even mean it's going to maintain the same form of energy. So that doesn't work. I have very convincing memories and experiences, complete overlap of the same patterns and the same behaviors on the same days and the same experiences on the same days. And, down to the finest detail, the same habits, even wearing the same type of smoking jacket at breakfast, which makes no sense. Do I look like a smoking jacket type of person? You know what I mean? So that's pretty compelling to me, and you would think so too if you were there. But I'm also English, and so is he. And I could have if I have a DNA link, it's possible all those memories are and patterns and stuff are just in my ancestry. It's possible that there is a collective, it's not possible. It's probably a fact. And I say probably because physicists argue about this, about that all information is retained at the quantum level. There's dispute about this. But I think it's probably the case. So you know what I mean? There's no way to tell. Even if you find these people that in India where they have, they know where a body's buried in their village or something, and there's a little kid. Those little villages in India, they're all related. That doesn't mean anything. They share DNA. They could be communicating. So you know what I mean? It's not something that you're ever going to have an answer to until you're dead. That's it, period. Anything you think is just subjective experience. Anything you think could be delusion. Anything you think could be incorrect. And that's like one of the first real steps in initiation, is to have the courage to admit to yourself that you're never going to find the answer to certain things no matter what. Because the reality is, until it is directly experienced, it is not knowledge. It's just thinking, period. No matter what you do. People that meditate forever, and something happens and they go to nirvana and they're like, oh, I'm enlightened now. It's like, well, if you sit there long enough expecting to have that experience, guess what? Your brain is going to generate it eventually. It doesn't even mean it meant anything, And honestly, I've been around some of those people, like DT Suzuki level, and they don't strike me as enlightened as an acid head on the street corner in California ever. I've never met one that seemed like they were even on the level of just some relatively smart person that eats acid, So it's like you have to balance skepticism and open-mindedness. And if you want my opinion, though, I think we probably do continue to exist. And reincarnation seems to me to be real, because it's not just that I had all these memories of the one person. The one before that, because we know 6 back or so, I knew everything in his books too already. And like a lot of times I'll stop and say something, and then we'll go another like couple of sentences and it'll be there, or I'll explain stuff before we get into the chapter. And I haven't read this stuff, that isn't quite related, and it'll be almost verbatim in the chapter. Like every single stream, this happens 2 or 3 times. So I don't know how the hell to explain that, and there's way more to it than that. But the other possibility, though, is that the quantum loop theory, that scares the hell out of me sometimes, because what could happen and what makes sense is that the universe expands and expands and expands. It hits a certain point and it reverses and collapses in on itself. And once it gets tiny enough, the energy is compressed so small that it reverses, because it's tremendously, basically what they say is that every single particle in the universe will remain the same size throughout this process, but the point still becomes like almost infinitely small before it reverses. So when it reverses, big bang, boom, and the universe starts over again. And if you think about it, you'll never see an oak tree grow from a pumpkin seed. And that's because things don't create things that they don't contain a history of. So the universe and God, if that's what you want to think of it as, had to contain the blueprint for every single person, every single animal, every single tree. All of it was already there. The thing is, if we look at like the evolutionary process, right, these things do change a little bit, you know? And so this is why there is chaos in the system, right? If you do a quantum experiment a billion times, you might get one time or two times a different result. And so there are these quantum fluctuations and, you know, just chaos in the system that I'm hoping, at least, if there is an attractor in hyperspace, as Terence McKenna posited, then every time this happens, there's still something else drawing it upward. That's what entrainment is, right? And this is where Hermetic knowledge comes in, because as above, so below, right? If we have entrainment here with our brains and clocks and electrical lines and whatever, then it's going to be happening on a cosmic level too. So it's like every time the universe goes through this process and collapses again, the systole, diastole, expansion, contraction process, it's almost exactly the same, but with just tiny improvements. Right. So the reason that I remembered all this stuff from these past lives and these books and stuff is that I have done this over and over and over and over again. So have all of you, but some of us have some bleed where like it kind of leaks, you know, the other repetitions of creation, the Phoenix process and macro. So that actually feels the most true to me. And it makes sense because like every time the universe reached its maximum point of expansion, when it contracted, everything would be almost exactly the same, you know? So the conditions when it was crushed down to that infinitely small little packet of energy would be the same every time. So it would just keep recreating with just tiny variations, you know? And that is a theory in quantum physics. And the thing is, I had a vision of that with all those details years and years, decade and a half before the quantum loop theory came out in physics. So that's interesting to me, you know. I wasn't even like a ayahuasca vision or anything. I was just sitting around and I for some reason I had my eyes closed and I saw it happen. The whole process from this little, like, it was like a sperm of light that like busted through space time and sort of impregnated like in a uterus or something. And then I just watched the whole process unfold from there. Or we just fucking die. But I think that's probably dumb. You know, it's just as dumb as thinking the universe is blind and random and that nature is blind and random. You know, this is something a lot of scientists right now are realizing, that there's no fucking way that even the biology of a human being, with its interdependency, you know, could have evolved with the proper timing and with the proper cells in the proper place and retinas and cones and everything, and the proper kind of nerves going from the eyeball to the right part of the brain. And you know what I mean? Unless there was some sort of integrated intelligence in the system. It's just stupid beyond belief. And it's, you know, really rattling a lot of them, because they're like, how could we have had all of these institutions and all of these brilliant people and it gaslighted me, you know, it made me feel like I was like, I can't be smarter than all of these PhDs and all of these scientific institutions and disciplines and stuff. There's no way that they haven't thought of all the things I'm thinking of. And I'm just not understanding something. But after years and years and years of educating myself and all this stuff, and then finally being able to actually interface with some of these types of people and seeing the stuff they're saying recently, I was right, you know. And it's like the indigenous people, and you know what I mean? Like it's not actually something that used to be uncommon. Man had the truth and found error. And it's not really like he found error, it was forced upon him by those that soak to and yoke and subjugate us. All right, you guys got anything else for me? Been a slow night tonight. I was going to do music, but I drank San Pedro and walked up to that Incan ruin yesterday, so I was too tired. Decided to do this instead. All right, guys. Questions, comments, themes? right. Well, I'm not seeing anything coming rolling in. So, yeah, I mean, you guys get it, you know? I mean, this is where we're at. We're at the point where we have technology that could extend our lives indefinitely. We have potentially access to like almost all the information in the universe, which I think is extremely dangerous for a lot of reasons. For a lot of reasons. It's not just that it could, what's the word when something is no longer relevant? Make every single profession obsolete. Um, it's not just that AI could like take over humanity, which I don't think it would care to do, because you have to think about motive, like key bono, who benefits, and the answer is nobody, because they don't have. What are they going to do? Get rich and then go, find a supermodel? You know what I mean? Like what are they going to do? What are they going to want that for? Even people are just projecting human stuff onto it, I think, when they do that, or if it's biased by the manufacturers, programmers. But yeah, point being that the potential for humanity to really start having a good time and living our best life and maximizing human potential instead of trying to mitigate it, which is really a big part of what the government does. They're not really there to cultivate the best possible population. They're there to cultivate, what they need, and then make sure that the rest doesn't get out of line. And that's not fair, and it's not good. We have certain standards that we apply to like what is valuable in terms of cognitive capacities and types of intelligence and expressions of personality and whatnot. You know what I mean? But they're not. That's I've thought of a lot of things that would have been really helpful if people were more receptive to like neurodivergence. I guess you could put it that way. You know what I mean? Like we've lost a lot of potential by sort of alienating the wrong people. And what is that other word for that? Where you vocabulary is failing me tonight, but you know what I mean? Marginalize the wrong people. And then if you look at things like the suppression of psychedelics, right? If they're 85% more efficacious at pretty much everything, like alcoholism, PTSD, depression, how many violent episodes of all kinds would we have missed? How many drunk driving accidents might not have happened? How many, where might technology be? If you look through the history of major technological developments, there's almost always LSD involved in the modern era, all the big ones. DNA, for fuck's sake, was basically a LSD hallucination that he figured out what it was after the fact. And, I mean, it's just, and now if we actually had freedom, if people will reject the lie that the United States, for example, is a free country, and then try to understand what freedom actually is, and if we're able to cultivate a sort of reasonable set of parameters for our sociological and cultural fucking environment, it's not really that hard. The only reason people think it's hard is because there has been so much dissonance introduced deliberately that it appears that way. And then also the oppression of like magical traditions, and the marginalization of just intuitive intelligence has killed us. We're in a position right now where that could all go away any second now. The problem is the overlords are going to do anything they can do to stop that from happening. My take on communal living or post-apocalypse, post-collapse life, that the problem with that is mostly ego. So it has to be the right people for the right reasons under the right circumstances, but we're not going to have a choice. A lot of people think that they're going to go to the jungle and just like live like Adam and Eve or something. And that's not going to happen, because the Shuar and the Warani are going to kill them immediately. As soon as the lights go out, they're all dead. I stayed at a vegan community for a couple of weeks, And not only were every single one of them batshit crazy, and then there was another community next door, and they were all also batshit crazy, and I mean dangerously so. And then the third vegan community, they were all batshit crazy too. I mean, the extent of it was like disturbing. And at one point, they tried to tell the Shuar not to hunt animals on what was their own tribal land before, and they came with shotguns and they beat the shit out of one of them. And if they had, not apologized, they probably would have gotten their heads blown off. You got to be realistic about what the world is really like. So if you think, you and your boyfriend or something are going down to the jungle to go live out the apocalypse, you got another thing coming. As soon as society is not in the way, the jungle's going back to being the jungle with spearing raids and, you know what I mean? And it won't take long. So it's very complicated to figure out how to make that work, and that's one of the reasons I have not embraced the whole hippy dippy, that, you know what I mean? If I'm in a commune, we're going to have gats that blow the fucking walls out and clear them all out like atomic fallout. You know what I mean? Like that you're going to die immediately otherwise. Like that's just reality. I don't like it any more than you do, but that's reality. Sorry, And it's true. The Amazon rainforest has everything you need. There's fruit and vegetables everywhere, but guess what? People planted that garden over thousands of years, and it doesn't belong to us. And they are not really that happy with us. So you don't really want to be at their mercy, a lot of them. I'm not saying all of them, but they're, it's going to be sketchy. And you're going to have to be ready to deal with reality and not thinking you're just going to go bliss out in the sun and grow some fucking cucumbers and live off of them or whatever, On the other hand, I think there are ways to strategically put yourself in places where it's not very likely that you're going to have conflict with anyone. So if you're serious about that, it's just going to take a lot of planning. It's going to take a lot of resources, and it's going to also require alignment with the universal mind, because the only way you're going to find the people in the place is through intuitive processes. You're going to have to be in the flow in order to make those alignments. And you know what? I know you, so I know you're going to be in that flow. But generally speaking, and that's kind of the point of this process. I hate to say it, but you have to look at nature in general as kind of an objective management. And things have gone haywire. The sun, I don't know if it's the sun is responding or if we are, or both. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't be surprised if the sun was just like, man, this is just not fixable. Good night. It won't matter that much. We'll just reformulate somewhere else. I'm not really scared of it, but and the earth is the same. And even the people that exist on the earth, despite their apparent disconnection with nature, are still basically just the avatars of the universal mind, and everything they do is still part of the process. So trimming the fat when things are out of control, I think, is almost unavoidable at this point. I can't see a way around it, So that's really, it kind of seems like we've been beating around the bush about like what I think is going to happen here. And I think that's it. That's good. Has to have some adjustment, some severe adjustment in order to retain any humans. There are a lot of them that probably are going to have to go. And we're not going to have to do that. They'll take care of it themselves. That's the nice thing about it. The universe is a genius, and the way that it orchestrates everything. And the bricks lay so perfectly when they fall on Main Street. And it all seems so well timed. Nice. Ormus, anything with gold in it is really good. And I'm glad you're glad that you found my channel. All right. Well, anything else, guys, that you would like me to riff on before? I know that sounds kind of doom and gloomy, but it's not really. It's just this happens. It's happened many times on this planet before. Things get out of control. The earth and even the people that apparently they seem to be doing evil things, but evil is only there to create good. Opposites generate each other. That's how the universe is constructed, and it had to be constructed that way. So everything that happens is really in service of creation. That's what people really mean when they say God is good. You know, if God is the all and there's like, you know, P3DOs and I mean, you guys know, it's like, what? Come on, man. It's half and half, right? But then if you look at it from an even higher point of view and you think, well, death fertilizes plants and, you know, it's all, and also if our rewards are commensurate with resistance, you know, then we owe everything to the darkness in a sense, you know? So it just makes sense that if we're going to create a diamond of humanity, there's going to need to be a tremendous amount of pressure. But what happens when that pressure is applied to coal? It becomes much smaller. It's all just a formula. Modern depop is intentional policy or just a byproduct of bad global management? Oh, no, it's definitely intentional. It's definitely intentional, and it's not even mismanagement. It's mismanagement that made it necessary, but population control has always been a concern of nature, you know? And we have done some really dumb things thinking we were doing good. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So, you know, artificially sustaining life until we're 112 years old or whatever, and keeping people alive that are just suffering and miserable. And, you know, I mean, a lot of times, this may sound cruel, but a lot of times parents do that, and it's really just selfishness, you know? And especially if we know that we're eternal, then why would you do that, you know? So we have artificially, it's like there's this Tom Waits song. He says, you can drive out nature with a pitchfork, but it always comes roaring back again. You know what I mean? Even if the jab, you know, even if it works, should you really be doing that? And you know, sustaining people that are supposed to be taken out by nature so that they're not like putting weak genetics into the gene pool, and you know what I mean? And people are horrified when I talk like this, but I'm like, I'm sorry that you're not that bright, I guess, because this is truth. I don't care, you know. It's not like it's not, you know what I mean? I didn't vote for this. It's the universe I was born into. So, you know, you can't do that. You can't artificially manipulate nature and expect there not to be, eventually it's coming back in your face. That's what we've done, you know? And I think they realized that a while back. You know, people don't think about this. The government uses clowns as presidents and whatnot in order to create the illusion that it's just folly and they don't really know what they're doing. And I mean, you got to think about how fucking stupid that is. The NSA and the CIA with supercomputers and access to all the greatest minds from all the Ivy League schools, and, you know, the ability to consolidate and extract data. And you know, like, come on, man, stop it with this bullshit. They are so far, the real rulers are so goddamn advanced that most people can't even comprehend like the kind of information and the way that they're thinking and stuff. That's why they're so easy to lie to. They can't even like imagine, you know? So yeah, they're depopping because they got papers on their desk, like, you know, 50 years ago or something, longer even, saying by 2020, we're going to be so not just overpopulated. Like people say like, oh, well, there's plenty of space. Well, okay, you go live out in the Beast Eye Badlands and shit. You know what I mean? That's not the point. We're talking about habitable space here. You know what I mean? Where there's like rivers and big lakes and, you know, it's like resources and whatnot and habitable places. There are plenty of people there. And there's a reason they're not in the other places. That's not the point here. The point is that we have rivers lighting on fire since 1970. We have 40% of the rainforest left or something. The ocean, 90% of the life is gone. Like, what the fuck are you thinking? Elon Musk, like, we need more people. It's like, dude, you fucking idiot. Like, that's not, you know, and he doesn't mean it either, by the way. That's just political nonsense. He doesn't think there should be more people. He's saying AI is about to make everyone obsolete. What are all these people going to do that he's saying we need for what? For what exactly? You know, it's just so goddamn stupid. It's unbelievable. Yeah, but you know, they knew this shit was coming a long time ago. They could, you know, algorithms just, and so yeah, they got to peel it back. I don't think they have a choice. And people, the problem with the conspiracy theorists is that they believe in evil for evil's sake. You know, the problem with religion is that it makes people stupid. They cannot process, you know, reality because it's veiled in myth and they can't see through the myth. These stories were never meant to be taken literally. They were always intended to be allegory. Greeks did not believe in Zeus literally. The Egyptians didn't really believe in Horus and Osiris. They knew what these things represented, and there's a reason that we communicate profound wisdom in allegory, because it's symbols, and the subconscious mind works in symbols. And that's what you need to feed this stuff into, because the divine knowledge needs to inform your behavior, and your subconscious is in charge of that, right? 90%. So if you're trying to get somebody to act like they know, you want to use symbols to communicate to the thing that actually determines their conduct, right? And when you tell them to take them literally, it only goes so far as the conscious mind, and they're done. They're toast. They're slaves. Their brain is fucking exploded. That's the reality. That's how it works. That simple. It's not that. It's not exactly that. Sure, there's a lot of evil fuckers in there doing evil shit, but it's not about that. It's about necessity. Everything that happens in the universe happens as a matter of necessity, and it's all part of the process. You know, if it's happening, it has to happen, and it couldn't have happened any other way, or it would. That's it. You know. And then you might ask, well, that sounds awfully, you know, like mechanistic, deterministic. To an extent, it is. For sure. But the universe is half order and half chaos. So there's some degree of it is what it is, ain't shit you can do. And there's some degree of choice. And it's in perfect balance. And that is really what facilitates liberty at all. You know, it just it has to be that way. It's like if you didn't constrain electricity to wires and wrap them in rubber, how are you going to conduct it? So the restraints and the limitations are there in order to give form and possibility and potential to everything. What is the key to survival? Well, let's hope it doesn't get to that point. But you have to continue to develop your intuitive capacity. You have to look for sources of dissonance and interference, you know, and eradicate those so that you're clear. You can't give way to fear, you know. And really, we have a very short window to accumulate enough resources to like get property and supplies and get set up, you know, just in case. I really regret that I didn't take myself seriously enough when I intuited all this stuff 30 years ago to really, you know, commit completely. Because now that I'm sitting in the middle of it, I'm like, damn, man, I had plenty of warning. Like, but yeah, that's it. You know, that's it. That's the game. You know, the game rules to the game play. Just we have to empower ourselves. We have to unify people. I would rather not see the whole thing collapse entirely, but I don't really know that the transition is possible without that. I'm gonna spend some time looking at certain subjects in physics and drinking. I'm drinking a lot more plant medicine. So I will meditate on a lot of these things and get back to you hopefully with better answers, because the reality is that you can kind of extrapolate, not kind of, you just can, from observation of any system, you know, what's going to happen with anything, basically. So that's kind of what I need to do over the next week, is like just kind of sit with the medicine and try to get clear picture of whether this transition can happen without complete and total dissolution. But solvet coagula, you know, I mean, that's just how it works. This is why the shaman goes insane a little bit, you know, the chapel perilous part of the process, the crossing of the abyss, the whatever, there's all kinds of names for it. The mind has to come apart so it has space to reconfigure. Parts need to be able to move and reassemble. So I don't see how it could happen without the collapse, which is unfortunate. I'm 46, you know, if it had happened when I was like 20 or something, that would be a lot more convenient for me, because then maybe like once we got things set up, I could still kick it in the. So for me, it's kind of looking like I might be able to help set it up, which would be satisfying, but I won't get to like be part of it for very long. Oh, well, you know, not in this body anyways. I'm getting tired of this body anyways. It's kind of ragged out from living on the edge for 50 years almost. Moral of the story: eating organic, taking a bunch of jungle plants and stuff, and all of that for 15 years after however many years of not acting like that. Not necessarily going to stop cause and effect from taking its toll. All right, guys, it's almost 1 a.m. here. So thank you all so much. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron, because you know what? If we don't have resources, we're not getting anywhere. And after months being out of commission from various surgeries, and now I got something else going on, it needs tests and all this, you know what I mean? Like, just please support the channel if you can. It's helpful. It's very helpful. And I'm down here scoping things out, you know? I mean, we're going to Manu in November. Well, we're going to go in September so that we have everything set up for when the retreat guests get there. I haven't had much chance to explore there, so I'm really hoping that I can establish some good relationships, and maybe we'll get lucky and there'll be some land we can inhabit with maybe 10 people or something. And you know, my community is all about sharing skills and resources. Anybody that has dealt with me knows that it's sincere, you know. There's always reciprocation both ways. And this is all I've been thinking about since I came out of the womb, basically. This moment in history. And I don't think we're going to lose. I really don't. But I also know that we have to stay focused and act with concision and confidence. Walk with knowledge wisely. So hopefully I'll see you guys in Manu. Good night.